Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing this evening? It is 1:59 a.m. I was kind of trying to wait until 2 a.m. so I would remember exactly what time I started the vlog, but it's gonna turn here, and it just turned 2 a.m. so the witching hour. Isn't 2 a.m. the witching hour? I think it is. It's supposedly, I think, like 2 to 5 a.m. Like when people do paranormal investigations and things like that, that they set up recordings because it's supposedly you can hear like the dead talk between 2 and 5 a.m. Have you guys heard about that before? Anyway, I've seen that, like, I think in a couple movies. Maybe it's 2 to 4. I don't know. Is it 3 a.m.? Somebody let me know. Maybe 3 a.m. is the witching hour. Let me know in the comment section below, because I don't know. I guess I could Google it, but since I'm talking right now, I'm driving. I can't do that. I don't know if this is going to be a long vlog or not, you guys. My allergies are in full effect this year. My nose has been running all day long today. My throat is super, super itchy. And my allergies have just really gotten me down today. So Alex's allergies are horrible too. So we're just the house of allergies, I guess. But anyway, I don't know how long this vlog is going to be today. So I don't even have any clue what I'm going to talk about. We got up today and we went to brunch and had a really nice brunch. I had coffee, and I had an egg white omelet, and I had my arugula salad. And I just remembered that the our waiter, who's like we're friends with, he gave me some of the dressing to bring home because they make it in-house, and apparently you can buy it, he said. So but anyway, he gave me enough that will probably last me like a couple days of making salads. So, back on track as of today, with the dieting and stuff. Doing pretty good today. I found myself, and probably because of last night, I found myself like craving food all day today. It did not help that I laid down for a little bit, and Alex, I like made videos, like Alex slept all afternoon, and I made videos, and I read, and I did some other stuff, and Tanya and I hung out for a little bit earlier, and he was so tired. He was like, I'm so tired today. So he slept most of the afternoon. So then he went, and when Tanya and I got back, he was sleeping, so I went and hung out with Tanya. And when I got back, he was like, I'm gonna go to the grocery store, and he got like pizza rolls and a bunch of other stuff, and chips and hummus and stuff. So I'm laying down taking a nap, and I can smell the pizza rolls being made in the kitchen, and they smell so good. But I haven't been really craving anything, so it was weird that happened. Yeah. But other than that, back on track, doing okay. And what else? That's about it. I didn't really do a whole lot. Tanya and I like hung out and made videos, went to brunch. There was like something I wanted to talk about on here. I can't remember what it was now. It was interesting. I was like reading through Twitter before I left, and Eureka O'Hara, who is a drag queen on RuPaul's Drag Race, her mom died recently. And she tweeted out something about, since my mom died, I feel a certain amount of overwhelming fear. And then she said, like, is that normal? And I thought it was so interesting that she said that, because it made me, like, really think back to when my mom first died, you know? And I don't know if it was, like, I don't know if it was a conscious thing. Well, I mean, it obviously wasn't conscious, but I didn't, like, you know, I've talked about this before. I was so numb, like, right after my mom passed away. I think, like, for me, like, it's weird looking back, you know, like, I think about the fact that, like, my mom and December, because we went to Gatlinburg. That was the last time that we went to Gatlinburg for Christmas, obviously, because she passed away the following year. But, you know, we went to Gatlinburg and then we came back, and then she got really, really sick in January. And then I think it was like the first week of February, she went into the hospital for the first time. And then within that first 2 weeks, she was in and out of the hospital like 3 times. They released her for they said it was dehydration, which it wasn't. It was actually, she had Wegener's vasculitis granulomatosis, which is an autoimmune disease, and very, very few people get it. It's very rare. And she had actually gone to another hospital first, and they had diagnosed it. And, well, she, like, in between the stays, she went to this other hospital, and they diagnosed it. So, I think she was in the hospital twice. I can't remember how many times, but anyway. And then the third time she went in was the time that I talked about with my stepmom, you know, helping get her in there, and her being really resistant to going in, and she went in. And then she was in there for like a week, and then she was in a coma after that, and for a long time. And March, April. Yeah, that would have been right. It's weird to think, you know, that coming up on the date of my mom's passing. But, you know, like, everything leading up to her being in a coma was just so fast. And I just think I didn't even, like, really realize it. You know, my entire life, my mom was not someone that was ever sick. She just was never sick. And both of my parents really are never sick, or never have been sick, really. Like, they have really, you know, strong immune systems, which is so... My mom used to always say that. She'd say, I have such a strong immune system, which is so strange. And she ended up dying of an autoimmune disease, you know? And, but, like, even just colds and stuff, they never... Like, my dad, like, never gets sick like that. Both just really healthy people. And I also think, like, it was a lot of their perception, too. You know, like, when I was growing up as a kid... Like, if I wanted my dad to call me in sick to school, like, and I'm not talking about, like, if I was, like, deathly ill, but, like, if I was just, like, a cold or whatever, he'd be like, ooh, I can't call in sick to work, so you need to go to school, because you need to learn that we don't just not follow through with our obligations because we have a cold, you know? And my mom's attitude was very similar to that, too, that, you know, just because you're a little sick, I'm not talking about contagious sick, I'm not talking about, you know, where you shouldn't be around people, I'm not talking about, like, where you can't get out of bed, I'm talking about, like, having a cold and stuff like that, you know, they just, you went on with your life like you had to, you know? And so that was both of my parents' attitudes about things. And so I never really saw either one of my parents, my stepmom either, you know, sick when I was growing up. And, so I just was really never around, like, sickly people. And in fact, when I worked in treatment, you know, like, I, every year, would, like, max out my sick time, like, accruing it, because I never took sick time. And I partly because, like, it really took a lot for me to call in sick. Because what I knew was, if I called in sick, then somebody else would have to deal with my responsibilities, and I didn't think that was fair. So unless I was, like, super, super sick, and I wouldn't call in, and so I rarely ever called in. And I think that, you know, when you do that, when you rarely call in, if you're somebody like me, you'll know what I'm talking about. It really kind of skews your idea of what sick is, because then you never really know, well, what is too sick? You know what I mean? Like, when am I too sick? Like, working, you know, in a hospital setting, I wouldn't go in if I thought it was contagious. Like, if I thought I was that sick that, like, I had no business being around people, I wouldn't go in, you know? But if it was just, I was feeling, like, you know, just down, or, like, had a cold or whatever, you know, like, and I'm not talking about, like, a bad cold. I'm talking about, you know, you're sneezing a little bit, but it's manageable. So, yeah, so it's weird. Like, I don't, like, when my mom was sick that first month, like February going into March, whatever it was, I think that was part of there she was kind of coherent and in and out. I don't remember, like, okay, so my mom, when she went in to the hospital the first time, she was there like 4 days. They released her with dehydration. I don't know how many days she was in there, but anyway, it was like 4 or 5 days. She was so weak. And they released her on this like very stringent diet of like, she had to like drink those electrolyte drinks, and then she had to like, every day she had, like, she couldn't keep stuff down. Like, she just, like, it wasn't that she was vomiting, she just couldn't keep any weight on her. She was losing weight like really, really fast. And so we had to like buy Jell-O and cottage cheese and soups and all this kind of stuff because she was so dehydrated. And so then she was home, I guess, for like a week or two. And that was when we had like people there 24 hours a day, and I would go over there and sit and like, she would do the crossword with people, and she would like read like the, her 12-step stuff, and she would watch movies. And a lot of times I would go over there and she would just sleep, and but she wanted me to stay because she didn't want to be alone. So I would like stay downstairs and just sit down there and watch TV and stuff because it was really comforting to her for somebody just to be in the house. She's like, I don't like to be alone. It made her very nervous. I think, in retrospect, I think my mom knew that things were not good. And I almost kind of wonder if she didn't have a fear of dying, and that she thought if she was alone, like maybe it would happen to her. I almost kind of wonder if it was something like that, because she didn't want to be alone at all. And we literally had people there 24 hours a day. Somebody was always with my mom. And so then she went back in the hospital because she refused. So like, we would give her food and we would give her these drinks, and then she would refuse to drink. Like, she would like take a sip. She'd like, we had straws and everything. So next to her bed was, like, she would have like an electrolyte drink with a straw in it, and then a bottle of water with a straw in it, and then like a Sprite with a straw in it, and then like cottage cheese, yogurt, all this stuff. And she would like take one bite of cottage cheese, and then she'd say, I can't do anymore. And then she'd take a sip of water, and then she'd say, okay, I can't do anymore. And she was really resistant to it. So like, after 2 weeks, she got so weak, she had to be readmitted to the hospital. And then they readmitted her for dehydration. And at that point, her kidneys were being affected by it, which is because the kind of autoimmune disease that my mom had affects certain areas of your body. So somebody can get it and it can affect their lungs, whereas somebody else can get it and it can affect their kidneys. With my mom, it affected her kidneys, which is why she was dehydrated. And she did tell me that for her, like, one thing that was really, really scary, I do remember this, that before, she said, this is when I knew something was wrong, was that she started having blood in her urine, and she didn't understand why, and it was, like, a lot. And that was before she went into the hospital the first time, because I can remember we talked about it, and she said, there was, like, 3 days in a row where there was blood in my urine, and it really scared me. So then the second time she went in the hospital, she was there for the same amount of time, and she was pissed. She didn't want to be there, but she and my aunt both, like, hated being in the hospital. And because my aunt fell and broke her hip, and she had to be in this rehab hospital, and she just fought it tooth and she hated being there. So my mom was like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here. And so again, we set up, all these people to come over. We all had shifts at my mom's house and stuff like that. I've talked about this before. Like, when my mom was in the hospital, when she was in ICU and she was in a coma, which I'll get to in a second, she, my aunt had this system of people, like, set up to go there and stay with her. And I just really had a hard time with it. Like, I really, really struggled. And I say this to help other people, to understand that it was kind of something that needed to happen for me. So my mom, my aunt would be like, okay, Peter, you need to be there from 6 to 10. And then I would go there and just sit, and I would read sometimes, or other times I literally would just sit in a chair and look at my mom, and I remember my dad came in, it was like a Friday night or something. I don't remember what night of the week it is. I've talked about this on here before, but he was like going home, and he was just like, doing his rounds and stuff. And so he came in there to like just check on my mom before he left. She was not his patient. My dad was not part of the team or anything like that, but he just kind of came in, and my dad, like, always, like, his point was that he wanted to serve between being able to communicate from the doctors to me, which was, and he helped with this too, with my aunt setting up a meeting, because it was a fat joke, because my mom had 7 doctors on her team, and they never communicated to me, and they never communicated to us. And finally my aunt pulled this, like, because my dad said you need to have a team meeting, and so my aunt arranged it, and because none of the doctors were talking, and none of us talking to us, so we had literally no clue what was going on with my mom. And let me just put this in perspective for you. This was at the hospital that my dad had worked at for 35 years. So my name carried absolutely no weight in this hospital. Like, it didn't matter that who I was, and that was so sad to me, that, like, if this is how you're going to treat somebody, like, I don't believe that I deserved any special treatment. That's not what I'm saying, okay? But what I'm saying is, if this is how you would treat somebody who, there's an employee that's been here for 35 years and was chief of staff for 12, how do you treat a normal person that just comes through here that has no connection to this hospital whatsoever? Because I had no clue what was going on with my mother. Like, none whatsoever. I didn't get daily calls, and I sure as hell didn't get weekly calls from them. We got more information from the nurses than we got from anybody else. Thank God to those nurses out there. And nurses really in hospitals are the lifeline between the patients and the families. But the problem was this, was that every nurse that was on a shift, a different doctor would come through and see my mom. So each nurse had a different piece of information. So each nurse was telling us something different, and often it was conflicting information. So that was a problem, because it wasn't the nurse's fault. They weren't communicating misinformation to us. It was that they didn't have the correct information, because the doctors that were coming on were telling different nurses different things, and the whole thing was just a mess. So anyway, my aunt was so funny during all of that. She would, like, she kind of, like, took over the ICU unit for a little bit. She, like, rearranged their, like, visitor area and told them what they needed to change, because it wasn't nice for the families and stuff. And she would sit out front, and in front of, like, there's this, like, valet parking that when you pull in, it's really nice, actually. I never valet parked, but I'm not a valet parking kind of person. So anyway, we did last night, or Courtney and I did last night, but just because I had the valet parking thing, but I don't usually ever valet park. I'm kind of weird about other people driving my car. I don't really love it. So anyway, she would stand out there, and they had these huge flower pots of, like, you know, mums and stuff, and she would just, like, my aunt would sit there, and she was, like, while we were waiting for people to come, because often we would go down there if somebody was coming, and we would wait and then bring them up. She would just sit there and take all, like, the dead flower heads off of there. I always thought it was so funny. But anyway, so my mom was in the hospital the second time, and then they released her again and said it was dehydration, even though they had all of the paperwork that said it was Wegener's vasculitis granulomatosis. They had all of the paperwork from the very first hospital that she went to. So anyway, so then she came home again, and it was the same deal. It was, you know, having people over there 24 hours. And this time my mom was even weaker than the first time. The first time, we could kind of get her out of bed, and she could walk around the bedroom and stuff. She couldn't go down the stairs anymore at that point. But she could kind of walk around. She was so weak. She was losing so much weight. What happened was they would get her in the hospital, they'd pump her up with fluids, then she would feel better a little bit for a while, and then she would come home. But what they couldn't figure out was that somehow she was losing fluids like that. And it wasn't because she was, like, urinating a lot, because that just wasn't the case. They could not figure out what was going on. And what it was that her kidney was no longer working. Her kidneys were no longer working. And she was in kidney failure. But we didn't know that at the time. So we bring her home and do the whole 24-hour day thing, the electrolyte drinks, and I think is it called Pedialyte or something like that? You know what I'm talking about. I mean, we had all of that, so much of that stuff, and just sitting around. It was so depressing when my mom passed away, because I went back, you know, to the condo, and I was, like, cleaning out the refrigerator that next day and stuff like that, and it was all just that. It was all, like, little yogurts and it was just sad. That's one of the hardest things, you know, is, like, if you've had a family member pass away, I think especially like, I can't speak to losing a child. I have no idea. I think that has to be the worst of it all. Like, I can't even for 1 second fathom that. I just can't even. I've never even had kids, and I can't even imagine what that would be like. But I've had friends of mine that have lost kids, and I've had several friends of mine that have lost kids. My friend Lori lost both of her sons to heroin overdoses. And what do you do, like, when you come home the next day, you know? Because, like, with my mom's place, I wasn't living there at the time, so, you know, it was just sitting there, and I would go there. I mean, sometimes I would stay there at night when she was in the hospital and stuff like that, but rarely. Like, I would go there and I would, like, read, and then I would, like, fall asleep, or I would, like, watch a movie, you know, and I would just, while I was going through stuff, because I was, like, forever looking, you know, like, I had to find all her bills and all this kind of stuff, and my mom had it set up in some weird system that I couldn't figure out. So, that was the second time she came home, and it was so much worse than the first time, and everybody kind of knew this was really, really bad, and I just had this really bad feeling about the whole thing, and that was when my mom and I had the conversation that I always talk about, like the last conversation. That was when we had it. And it started, it was like, okay, so that would have been, that might have been like the first week of March, something like that. Maybe the second week of March. I have no idea. Like, the timeline of when my mom was in the hospital and when she wasn't, and how long she was in a coma and all that kind of stuff. I really, like, I always say it's like 6 weeks to 2 months, 2.5 months, but I really have no idea. But I think she was in a coma for, it was close to 2 months. And, but we had a conversation. I remember it was a beautiful day outside, and she had the blinds, or we had the blinds in the bedroom, like, pulled up, and she could see out, and we used to have this huge tree outside, like, right outside the window. It since has fallen down, like, it got hit by lightning, but we have, and now we have a new tree that's there, but so anyway, I remember she was looking out at, like, you know, the cardinal, and that's where she came up that she said that so anyway, this is what happened. So I'll just tell the story since I'm telling it. I know everybody on here is probably like, Peter, we've heard this story a million times before, but my mom was laying on her back, like, kind of propped up a little bit, and I was laying on my side, and it was the middle of the day, and it was beautiful outside, and I said, I got, like, really scared, and I said, why aren't you fighting this? Like, you're such a fighter. Like, my mom was such a fighter in life. Like, she didn't pick her battles, and just everything in life was just, like, she fought. You know, she was an activist. My mother was an absolute activist in life, and I said, why aren't you fighting this? And she said, if I knew what it was, I could fight it, and I would fight it. But I don't know what this is, and I can't fight it. And somehow we got on to talking about just life. And she said, you know, maybe we should have a conversation. And I can remember getting upset about it and saying that I didn't really want to have a conversation, like she was implying, like, kind of a last conversation. And she said, no, I think it's important that you ask me things you've always wanted to know, or, you know, whatever. And that's what I did. And we had this fantastic conversation, and, you know, and that was where she said to me, like, if I come back, I'll come back in the form of, she said, you'll know I come back because it'll be a day. So we have, like, that cotton that flies through the air. My mom loved it. She thought it was beautiful. It almost looks like it's snowing on some days. She said, okay, is it going to stop? I think I'm almost at the point where it's going to stop. It's going to stop. I'll be right back. Whenever it's about to stop, the numbers, like the minutes ticking by, turn, like, reddish orange. So anyway, I can't tell if it's red or orange, but it looks like reddish orange because to the right of it right here, you can't see it, but it says record. It says .rec. So anyway, and right here is a box around my face, and then down there is some stuff that I don't know what it means. But anyway, so she said, you'll know that I've come back to you because it'll be a beautiful day outside, not a cloud in the sky, and the cotton will be flying through the air, and you'll see a perfect cardinal. And which my dad later said he thought was hilarious because cardinal is an Indiana state bird. You see them everywhere. And that cotton stuff's everywhere in the spring. It's probably 90% why I'm feeling like crap today because of my allergies. It's basically pollen is what it is floating in the air. So anyway, but funny part of that conversation was at the end of it, I asked her something about, so like the things about being like in the Pi Phi house, like so my mom was a Pi Beta Phi at Indiana University, and part of being like in the sorority was they were called the Misties, and those were like things that were like the secrets of being a Pi Phi that you don't tell anybody, kind of like the fraternity handshake and all that kind of stuff. And I remember I said to my mom, I go, what are the Misties of Pi Beta Phi? And she sat up and she goes, no, I can't tell you. And that was like kind of the end of our conversation, but it was funny that she said that, I thought. But anyway, yeah, and she shared a lot with me in that conversation, you know, not everything. And I think, you know, one of the things that's been hard for me to come to terms with is when I found out later that, you know, my mom never told me about my grandma, and she never told me about some other things like that I have since found but not talked about on here. You know, what's interesting is that would have been the perfect moment to do it, you know, but she didn't, and I respect that. Like, I remember later, Tanya and I had this conversation. I was like digging, trying to find all of this stuff out about my mom and her life, things that she hadn't told me, double checking things, you know. I kind of became obsessed with it for a while. And I remember talking to Tanya about it in the car. We were driving. I can see where we're at because we were like driving down this one street. And I said, don't you think, like, you know, if, like, when you died, like, don't you think your son has a right to know the things that, like, happened to you in your life? And she said, oh, no, not at all. I go, really? She goes, do I think that he needs to know everything that I did in my life? No, I don't think so. And I said, so you think it would be okay if, like, you had secrets that he didn't know about? She goes, secrets because I didn't want to tell my son because of how they would affect him? She goes, I don't know that I consider that a secret. She goes, I think your mom had things that she just didn't know how to communicate to you, or that she didn't really think that you needed to know. And I kind of looked at it, and she goes, Peter, you need to stop. She was like, you need to just stop searching. And I did, and I don't know, she said it to me, Alex said it to me, and my mom's friend Susie said it to me. And I just was like, at that point, I just was like, I'm done searching, I'm done, you know, trying to find things out. Is it still intriguing to me? Yes. And when bits of the story come up of this or whatever, like with my grandma, but you guys, there's so much that, so many different things of stories that it makes me wonder, you know, like, I don't know. I think my mom had a much more difficult childhood than she ever led me to believe. And I think in a way that I was protective of my mom from knowing that I was bullied is similar to how my mom was protective of me from not knowing what kind of childhood she really had. I think they were truly, truly impoverished in a way that I didn't understand. You know, my dad has never lied about that. Like, I think because for him, first of all, like, neither one of my parents were people that were ever impressed with money. Like, they just weren't. Did it afford them the ability to do nice things? Absolutely, you know? I mean, like, my dad loves to travel. My dad has always had beautiful cars. You know, my dad's house is unreal, you know? But does it... And my mother had a beautiful home, you know, when I was growing up and stuff like that. And she loved her condo, her little condo, you know, but it wasn't something that they weren't impressed by people just because of that, you know. It was interesting being at this thing last night. Like, I think sometimes one of the reasons why, like, I forget how people are, that people are just like, oh, what do you do and for a living, and really, oh, and where do you live? And it's like all these questions to kind of assess how much you have. And I think it's interesting, you know, like, I also think the other thing that's interesting, I was telling Alex about this today at lunch, is it's like this one area will not defrost on my windshield. Don't you hate that? I always find it interesting when you've known somebody for a long time, and yet like, every time you see them, you're like, so, how are you doing? And they're, like, going on for, like, 15 minutes, and they tell you, now listen, okay, do not throw in my face that I drive around and talk in a car about myself for an hour. I'm very, very well aware of that, okay? But this is not a conversation, like, legitimately, that I'm having with somebody right now, because if I was, I would be asking them about themselves. Okay, so I know I talk about myself for an hour. Nobody needs to say that. I get it, okay? I understand how self-centered and, you know, it's selfish, it seems. I totally understand that, okay? But, like, you know when you meet somebody and you see them time and time and time and time and time and time again, and they never once ask you anything about yourself? Like, literally never ask you anything about yourself. Like, Alex has a few friends that, like, sometimes when I've hung out with them, like, I'm just like, it just is baffling to me, you know? And he'll say, like, you just don't seem like you like them very well. And I'm like, they're just not engaging. Like, I don't really enjoy friendships where you don't have conversations because the conversation is so one-sided. Have you ever had that? Like, I just don't, you know? Like, Tanya and I get into a car and, you know, like, one of us will talk for a while and the other person will talk for a while, and we go back and forth when we have a conversation. We usually, Tanya and I, this is how our conversations usually go. It's like one of us starts and kind of just shares a little bit about it. It's not like there's not, like, structure. But, like, she'll get in the car and she'll be like, oh my God, I've had a day. And I'll be like, well, what's going on? You know? And she'll say, oh my God, this and that and this and that. And then she'll tell me about it. And then she'll usually be like, how's your day been? And then I'll tell her, and if I've had anything that's, you know, what happened. And, like, today I was telling her all about last night and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, you would have loved it. I was like, next year, you know, you and Eric need to come too, because you would have loved all the food stuff. We had so much fun just walking around trying all the food and whatever. And she was like, well, what food was there? And I was like, well, I couldn't really have anything because it was vegetarian. But I said, like, Courtney tried, you know, a little bit of everything. And I was telling her about a bunch of people that I saw. And so, you know, like, I like that engagement with conversations, but do you ever meet people that, like, they just don't? You know what I mean? And what you realize is they're just not very interested in you, which is totally fine, right? But then why are you wasting your time talking to them? Like, because are they just wanting to talk to somebody, you know, like, I don't know. There's a lot of phony BS that goes in the world that I just can't play that game. I've never been able to play that game. I'm not any good at that game. You know, like, I can feign interest like nobody's business. Like, I can sit there and act like I am so excited about, you know, your brand new, you know, Range Rover that you bought, but I really don't care at the end of the day. And I will, for about 30 seconds, act real excited for you and then ask you some other questions. But what's interesting to me is that usually when I sit and I try to have a conversation with somebody about, like, let's say, something that doesn't have to do, I mean, like, when you're at a thing like that, right? People don't really want to have conversations like that. Like, they really don't. Like, they don't want to have conversations, you know what I mean? It sometimes makes me kind of sad because I don't like looking at the world that way, you know? And then people pleasantly surprise me. You know, I always say that too. And I saw some people last night that, like, pleasantly surprised me. But anyway, what was I saying? I was talking about my mom, the conversation that we had. I don't remember what I was saying. Doesn't really matter, I guess. My nose is driving me crazy. But so then after that was when she fell in the shower, and my aunt was there. And she, like, fell in the shower and was, like, unconscious for, like, a little bit or something. And so my dad drove over there and got her. He, like, picked her up out of the shower, and it just seems so surreal to me, all of it, you know? And then he brought her to the hospital, and that she, like, was coherent there then. And I can remember I walked in because my dad called me and was like, you need to meet us at the hospital. And, like, I walked in and she was in a wheelchair. And so at some point in all of this, I became the administrator of her estate. So I became, like, I became my mother's guardian, basically. And so, like, nothing could happen without me being there. And or did that happen happened, no, that happened after that. Yeah, that happened after that last time. So anyway, but he was like, you need to come to the hospital. So that's when I came to the hospital. That's when my mom was like, I'm not going back in the hospital. I don't want to go back in the hospital. I just need to be hydrated. I swear I'll do what I'm supposed to do. She's like begging. She's like, please don't make me go in the hospital. Because this was literally like the third time in like, 4 weeks. She didn't want to go back in. And I understand it, I don't love hospitals either. I didn't want to, I wouldn't want to go back in there if I was her either. And so she was like, please don't make me go back in. She was like, please don't make me go back in. Please don't make me go back in. She was like, I swear to God, I will drink all of my, my mother would not have swear to God. That would have been serious to her. She wouldn't have done it. She was like, I swear I will, I'll drink all my drinks and I'll do what I'm supposed to do. And I'll get myself hydrated again. I just don't want to go back in the hospital. She did not want to go back in the hospital. And I felt so bad for her. And that was when my stepmom came in. And, so my stepmom drove around the hospital and she actually called her mother and she said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what my role is in this situation. And she and my mom had always gotten along all right. They were never friends, but they were respectful of each other. And, my mom would say things to me like, you're really lucky to have the stepmother that you have. She cares about you. She loves you. She's never once tried to be me. She's allowed us to have our relationship. And it was so unique. And so my stepmom called her mom and said, because her mom was a stepmom too, and she said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what my role is. My stepmom told me this later. That's how I know it. And her mom said to her, you've been there with Peter since he was 12. You need to go. That's the right thing to do, And so she was literally just driving around the hospital. So she came in. And when she came in, she had this ear, Bluetooth thing in. And my mom looked up at her and was like, what is the thing? And my stepmom had just gotten her hair cut. It had been really short. She got it cut shorter, or it had been really long. And always she had it down to her shoulders, and it was short. And not super short, but it was shorter. And my mom just looked up at her and she was like, what is this? She said hi to her, and then she's like, what is this? And she said, she was like, this is how I talk on the telephone. And my mom was always very confused about technology things. I am too, And she said, she was like, I don't know if I could understand how to do that. And I'll never forget, my mom just stopped and looked at her and she said, she's like, did you get your hair cut? She was like, you look so pretty. She said, you've always just been so pretty. And, my mom was not somebody that, early in the relationship, my mom felt threatened by her because she was young, she was in shape. So my dad and his partner every year, we have this huge tennis tournament in Indianapolis. I think they still have them, the RCA Tennis Championships. But back in the day, it used to be a huge thing. And my dad and his partner would my family is all tennis. They're tennis. My dad used to go to Wimbledon, US Open, French Open. He used to go to all of it. So they used to get box seats to this thing. Well, my mom was, one of her best friends in life was my dad's partner's wife. So on the days that, my dad wasn't going to be there, he would, my mom's partner would take my mom, because my mom loved tennis too. And my mom had access to those box seats before she had gotten divorced. So, and my dad didn't care, So one day, she, went there, and my stepmom had, two of her girlfriends. Okay, my stepmom's real tall, and they were, in shorts and tank tops, and my mom, I'll never forget, she always said something about her after that day. But, over time, she grew to really respect her, and get along with her, and she would even say things to me, of anybody in my family that I ever gave hell to when I was in high school, it was definitely my stepmother. That I'd be I'd kind of get into it and be you're not my mother. Even though we had a great relationship and I respected her, I'm not going to sit here and act for 1 second that I wasn't a snotty teenager and didn't throw that in her face, because I did. She'd say things to me if my dad was out of town, at a work conference or something, she'd say, you need to be at home at 12 o'clock tonight. And I'd be you're not my mom. You're not going to tell me what to do. You know what I mean? I pulled that card a lot. And, but then she and I became really close. So my mom and her always had I guess it's a strange relationship. I don't know. They were never friends, but they respected each other. My mom would say to me, you got so lucky with who you got as a stepmother. You could have got some royal bitch that wanted to take my place and tell you what to do, and you just didn't get that. You got just a really great person that really loves you and cares a lot about you. And, So she came in, and she was staying there. They were talking about the phone thing. Like, my mom's like talking like this, you know. And she's sitting in the wheelchair, and she said, "You just look so pretty." And so my stepmom knelt down on the floor, and she looked at my mom, and she put her hand next to my mom. So my mom was like literally like white, like ashen. And she like put her hand next to hers, and she said, "Do you see your hand?" She said, "Now look at my hand." And she said, "You're not getting enough circulation. You need to go in the hospital." And I remember my mom just like, we're all standing there. We've been like begging her, okay, to like go in. And she's like, "I'm not going to sign myself into the hospital." And so she was sitting there, and my stepmom said that. And she just like, and my stepmom like kind of like held her hand for a second. And my mom just looked right in her eyes. And she said, "Well," she looked up at us, and she was like, "If she says I have to go in, then I guess I have to go in." Like, I think about that, you know, like my mom's trust of her. I mean, cause like really indirectly, my mom was like trusting her kid's life to her, you know, always had, and then translated, here she is like, the only thing my mother was proud of her sobriety. She was proud of her education and all that kind of stuff. But the only thing that she was really, really ever proud of in her life was being a mother. She really, really was. It's probably why I talk about my mom so much. I mean, we were so close, you know? And she beat herself up so much for the drinking because she felt like it depleted. And as much as I talk about my mom being an alcoholic, which I talk about a lot, you know, I really do an injustice to talking about all of the fantastic things that my mother did for me, you know, all of the moments that I have, all of the things that she gave to me that are priceless, that have no money value to them whatsoever, of like my love for reading, my love of movies, my love of just, you know, noticing the small things in life, you know, a good cup of coffee and looking out, you know, into the backwoods at just the early dawn, you know, or early dusk, and, you know, just having a great conversation, sitting around. I mean, all of these things that my mother just handed, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things that she gave to me, you know? And I think sometimes, like, I diminish it by talking just about the addiction and things like that, but that was the thing that bound us at the end, you know? So anyway, my mom went in the hospital, and I can remember being in the emergency room. It was she and my aunt and I. We were trying to get her admitted. So she, like, they were having a hard time, like, admitting her. She got admitted through, like, the surgery center or something. She was having a hard time being admitted through the hospital. I can't remember why. But anyway, so she ended up getting in there, and then, like, the next day, I went in, and they were doing testing or something, and she, like, freaked. And anyway, it just got worse and worse and worse. And then my mom was in a coma, and she was in a coma forever. And they had her on dialysis while she was in a coma. So, like, literally every day that I would go in there, she was just getting bigger and bigger. Like, if you've ever seen somebody that's on dialysis for a long period of time, it's just like they get more and more and more bloated, and more and more bloated, and more and more bloated. And it's just, and it's saving their life, you know, but she was sedentary. So she didn't even look like herself. So my mother literally went from, my mom, most of her life she was in shape, but I would say she was 5-10 pounds heavier than she always needed to be. She was never heavy. Like, my mother was never heavy. But do I think, like, there were periods of her life where she was very, very thin. But, you know, I would say the last 15 years of her life, she was probably always maybe 5-10 pounds heavier than she needed to be, you know? But you wouldn't look at her and think she was heavy. So when she went into the hospital the first 2 times with dehydration, she literally lost like 45 pounds. Something ridiculous, 50 pounds. I mean, she looked almost emaciated. To then go in the hospital and be on dialysis, and then she looked twice as big as she had been when she came into the hospital. It was weird. And then she was in a coma, you know, for 6 weeks, 2 months. I don't even know how long it was. But anyway, I sat there, you know, and I just, I think I became numb in that whole process. Like, I think it became so surreal to me that at some point I realized she wasn't going to make it out. Like, when she had been in the coma for a while, I think my dad said something to me, like, at one point. Like, at the end, he did say some stuff to me, but, like, he said to me at some point, like, it was, like, a couple weeks in, like, 2 weeks in. My dad is just very, very direct. And he said to me, he goes, you know, this is not going to end well, right? And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, I mean, Peter, it's just not going to end well. Like, she's either going to have to be in some long-term residential facility and she just won't have any idea what's going on, which is exactly what the doctors ended up telling us. He said, or she's not going to be here anymore. And I don't think I really had figured that out at that point. Like, I think somebody could have exactly painted out for me what the picture was, or I don't, like, I just, you know, it wouldn't, it doesn't matter, you know? So anyway. So, I think I was so numb through that whole process that I, like, didn't even, like, really know or, like, was aware of what was going on to some degree. That, like, yes, my mother was in ICU and she was, like, terminally ill. But, I mean, we never said that. But I don't really know. Like, looking back, I don't really know what I thought. I don't know if I thought, like, she was going to come out of it and we were going to just be sitting in our living room again, you know? Like, I mean, at some point, I must have had some kind of come to Jesus moment in my head, some moment of clarity where I was like, this isn't, like, she's not coming home. But I don't remember having that moment. Like, I just don't. I just remember kind of just going through the motions. And if you've gone through something like that, I think that's what happens is you just kind of go through the motions. Like, because you don't really, you're, like, you can't really figure out what's going on. It's like, you know, and I don't think you really question it. And I was so tired and I just was so just, like, broken down by all of it, you know? And so, no, I think I was living in complete denial about what's going on. I don't think I really, you know? And then when my mom did pass away, it kind of felt like she had been gone for so long anyway. Like, I mean, I hadn't talked to her in 2 months. And she just, like, literally just laid in a bed. So she didn't look any different to me the day that she passed away than she did previous 2 months. Do you know what I mean? So, like, it almost kind of seemed to some degree like she had been dead for 2 months. And so, like, I had kind of, I guess, mourned her, but I hadn't really, because I had been in denial. But the other thing was that I think that because my mom was at the hospital, she wasn't at home, she became this thing to go visit. She became this thing to go see, like, you know. And so it was this thing that I had to do, I think, to some degree. Like, okay, like, I have to go see mom today, you know, or, you know, like, okay, I had a schedule of when I had to go over there. So, you know, 6 o'clock, be at the hospital, you know, 8 o'clock, be at the hospital, whatever, 4 o'clock, be at the hospital. So what was weird to me was when she was gone and I no longer had that structure, you know, and then after the funeral, because we don't talk about this, see, like, this is something in society we don't talk about, and we don't prepare people for this. The hard moments, you know, after the funeral, that's hard, okay, because people don't know how to talk to you. People don't know how to say, like, oh, my deepest sympathy, I'm so sorry, what can I do for you, you know? People don't know how to talk to you like you're a regular person anymore, because it's like, it's freakish, you just lost your mom, you know? They don't know what to say, really, unless you've gone through it yourself. And then even then, sometimes you don't know what to say. Hell, I don't know what to say to people half the time because I don't know how they're feeling, you know? So people stop talking to you is really what happens, you know, or they smother you. They stop talking to you or they smother you. It's really one of both things. It just, and you kind of, there's a part of you that really wants life just to get back to normal, but you're afraid of it getting back to normal too, because you're so holding on to that moment, because you know that once you get back to normal, they're gone. And that's it. You know, all this, God, my nose is driving me crazy tonight with this beard. Because you know that that moment that you let go and you stop and you get back to normal, they're dead, the funeral's over, the things are boxed away, everybody's forgotten, everybody's moved on. There's no planning of the funeral, there's no planning of the viewing, there's no food to get ready. It's done. Their life is all boxed away and put up on a shelf, and it's time to move on. And it feels weird. It's one of the weirdest feelings you've ever felt in your entire life, because a week ago, they were here. Just a week ago. It's even weirder because, like with my aunt and my uncle, like, they were talking right up till the end, So it's even weirder when it's like, okay, well, last Sunday, I was talking to my Aunt Kathy on the phone, and this Sunday, the funeral's over, the viewing's over, she's gone. Everything's done, It's weird. It's one of the weirdest feelings in the entire world. And if you're out there and you've gone through it, you're like shouting at it. You're like, oh my God, yes, it is so weird. It's weird. And we don't talk about it. We don't know how to deal with it, right? The other thing that's weird is that I remember the day that my mom died. I remember leaving the hospital, and I walked out to my car, and, so it's like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and I got in my car, and Bob Dylan comes on, which was my mom's favorite artist of life, hands down, Mr. Tambourine Man. I think I had been playing his music or something, but I'm that person that when, like, horrible stuff is going on, like, and I'm sad, I gotta make myself sadder, because I just gotta get it out, I just have to force myself to get it out. And I remember driving home, and it was like, because it was in May, and so it just was like a beautiful evening, kind of like tonight, except it's a little chillier tonight than it was then. It was probably in the 60s or 70s, and it was nice outside. I remember thinking to myself, it's over. And my mom and I had a friend in common that was sober. And I went back to my apartment, and she was like somebody that knew. Like, she's somebody that knows what to say in shit situations like this, right? And I remember I got back to my apartment, and I was just sitting there, and I was like, I didn't really know what to do. I didn't want to go to my mom's condo, and it was weird. Like, I needed to go to my mom's condo. I felt like I needed to be there, but, like, I didn't want to go to my mom's condo because, in a weird way, I kind of felt afraid, like, on some kind of spiritual level. Like, I am a believer of souls and spirits that pass, and I believe in an afterlife, and I do believe in all that. I talked a lot about that, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know that I want to be in my mom's condo if, like, she's lingering tonight. It felt weird to me. I know that to some people out there it sounds crazy, it sounds buffoonery, but that's how I felt. That's just, that was my feeling in that moment. And I remember my friend called me, and she said, and she was this was my friend in her 60s. She was close to my mom's age. She at the time was probably in her late 50s. So anyway, but my mom and I had both kind of befriended her at the same time. And she said she would come over. Oh my God, this woman would come over to my mom's house and do crosswords and read to my mom and watch movies for hours. They would play games and stuff in bed. Like, she was so fantastic with my mom. This was like, she's like one of those people. We're not friends anymore, and not because we fell out or anything like that, but just because, like, our lives kind of went separate ways. And we'll see each other every once in a while, but, like, I just don't see her the way that I used to. And she's just one of those people that is so, like, damn real that I was gonna say something else, but I'm trying to watch my cussing. But she's one of those people that's just so real, that she knows what to say in situations, not because she's brilliant, not because she's wise, which she is, but because she just is a human being, and so she relates to other human beings of what they want to hear. And I remember I got home, and she said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just sitting here, I don't really know what to do. And she said, well, what are you gonna do? And I said, I don't know. And she said, I'm coming to get you. And I said, no, I don't really want to be around anybody right now. And she said, I don't really care what you want to do, I'm coming to get you. And I was like, okay. And she was like, so she came and got me, and she was like, what do you want to do? And I said, I feel like I need to be at my mom's condo, and I need to go through some stuff. I feel like I need to go through her big book, and I feel like I need to go through, her Bible, and I need to, And my mom had a dress in the basement that she had got from the Haight-Ashbury in the 60s. It was this Indian dress, and it was like black, and then it had all this woodworking beadery on it. And my mom had a little note, safety pin to it, and it said on there, when I die, please bury me in this dress with a flower, with a, what do you call it? A crown of daisies in my hair, which she got. So anyway, the peaceful hippie right till the end. The only thing she didn't get was what she wanted to be buried with, patchouli oil, but the funeral home said that they couldn't put it on her because, like, it was offensive to, like, they couldn't put perfume or cologne on, or oils on people because of, like, other people reacting to it there or whatever. So I just took the bottle of patchouli oil and I stuck it right in there. But I have to tell you one thing that was really cute, and I literally just, like, sobbed up. So in the state of Indiana, I don't know how this is anywhere else. This is kind of weird, but I'll get back to my friend's story in a second. But in the state of Indiana, it's a state law that you have to bury people in underwear, okay? I don't know what that's about, but so I had to find, like, you know, bra and panties for my mom. Well, if you've heard me tell the other story about when she had to go get the testing done, she was like, can you get me some underwear? It was like, she was going to the hospital, and I said, yeah. And that was when I found out that my mother, like, she sometimes wore a thong, but she also had, like, the 7 days. She was very specific about, like, what underwear she wanted me to get, and then she wanted me to get her, like, granny panties. She was like, don't put me into the hospital with, like, Victoria's Secret boy shorts, okay? Just, like, I need to have, like, respectful underwear when I go in there. And she was like, I want it nude, and I want it to match, and I have some brand new stuff in there, so grab it. Well, she had a couple packages of stuff like that was brand new, so I grabbed it. Well, I had this little bag. It was like this gift bag. I don't know what it was. And so I also, like, had some, I buried her with a cross. I buried her with some, like, hippie beads that she wanted. And I was putting it in this bag. Well, I was sitting on the closet floor because she had this, like, dresser in there that had all this jewelry, and it had her underwear, and it had, like, her stockings and things like that. It had everything in there, right? Well, at the very, very bottom of this drawer, when I was a little kid, I used to, like, as a blanket, and to suck my thumb, I used to always carry around this Ace bandage, okay? Because my dad used to have Ace bandages in his car always, and I don't know how it started, but I had this Ace bandage, and I can't believe I don't talk about this more on here. This is funny, because this is a huge part of me growing up, and I called it my edgy, and you wouldn't have even looked at it and known that it was an Ace bandage. You would have had no clue it was an Ace bandage, because it was so frayed and twisted and knotted and all this kind of stuff. And I used to love to put it in the freezer right next to the ice, and then I would just, like, go like this next to my nose. I loved the way that it made me feel when I was a little kid. My cousin Caroline had a quilt that she used to carry down with her, and now it's about this big. That's how much there is of it. So anyway, speaking of how it, like, you know, because you carry these things around with you for, you know, ever, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller. My mom, there were many edgies over the years, so there's probably 10 of them out there somewhere. There's a couple in my basement. I've saved one. And so there was one, and it was about that long in this drawer. And I took it, for me, like, because I was just like, oh my God, like, I had completely forgotten about it. And I was like, oh my God. And so I put it in the bag to take home with me. I had pictures that we were going to use to put this thing together. Oh, this was that night. So my friend and I, we went over there, and we played my mom's records, and we opened the back porch, and we sat out there and smoked cigarettes and drank coffee and told stories, and my mom would have liked it. She would have thought it was fun, you know, and I paid respect in my way to my mom that night, you know. And I wasn't scared to be there. It didn't feel weird to me at all, and I got her big book, and that's where, so if you haven't heard the story, I just told it on here not too long ago, but, like, when I was in the hospital with my mom, I had my friend hold her hand, who's also sober, and I said, will you say the Serenity Prayer? And she said, yeah, the Serenity Prayer out loud, and I said yes. And so she started to say it, and I stopped her, and I said, actually, will you say the third step prayer? And the third step prayer is about, it's remove me from the bondages of self, and it's about being of service to God. My mom was such a person of faith, you know, and it's about surrender. And so she said the Serenity Prayer, or she said the third step prayer for my mom, and when she said it, like, one of her tears fell and, like, hit my mom's arm, and then my mom flatlined. I mean to tell you, there were 6 of us standing in the room. We were all like, it was surreal, you guys. I mean, it was really surreal. So I go home that night and I get my mom's, I think on a spiritual level, maybe it was my mom hearing if she could, that she could go, like she needed to go spiritually, you know? So anyway, I get home that night and I find my mom's 12-step book, which really the only part of it that was highlighted whatsoever was the 3rd step prayer. It was surreal. Get all of her stuff, get her dress that she wants. I have it all put out, you know, and still smelled like my mom in the house, and it was just weird, you know. Her car was still parked in the garage, and yeah, it was weird. They don't tell you about that, you know, like when they hand you their purse and their wallet and their glasses that you always see them in, you know, and they give it to you in like a little plastic bag to take home. It's like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? You know what I mean? Like, I've been vlogging for exactly an hour because it's 3 a.m. You know what I mean? I have a box in the basement that used to have quite a bit of things in it. It doesn't anymore. But I have my mom's glasses in there, and I have her watch, and I have her wallet with her ID and things in there. And, you know, much of the things that I have of my mom's, I keep a scarf of hers that she used to wear sometimes around her neck. And many of the things that I have of my mom's, I have because they still smell like her. But really, I don't think that that matters much anymore, honestly. You know, I think it matters the memories that I have. And, I don't know. If I was going to tell anybody, like, that's going through it, what to prepare the most for, I would say after the funeral and immediately after them passing. The 2 things that, you know, I remember my friend said to me what was the weirdest thing for her was, well, she said the hardest for her was the viewing, not the funeral. And so she said, you know, the viewing is like really hard, but once you get through it, the funeral's fine. The viewing was easy for me. I just felt like it was just people. My mom's viewing was 4 hours, and this is like, I want to make this very, very clear about people's perceptions of themselves in the world. My mother didn't think she had a lot of friends. She didn't think a lot of people really cared about her, you know? In fact, she would say things. I would say, why don't you call so-and-so to do something? I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to burden anybody. She would always say that, right? My mother was a person that didn't believe that she had a lot of friends. And her viewing was 4 hours. I think it was 4 to 8. And it was constant flow of people. Constant. I also think that has a lot to do with the fact that my mom died at 64, not 84. Like, I really think, I've gone to a lot of funerals for people like that are older, like in their 80s, and the reality is, most of the people that they were friends with are either gone, they aren't connected to anymore, or they've moved. Like, I really think that's what happens, because when you go to funerals of people that are a lot older like that, you very rarely see like tons of people there, unless they've been working or interacting with the society, you know, until the time that they died, you know what I mean, that they know a lot of younger people, but typically that's not the case. And then her funeral was standing room only, upstairs and downstairs. And, yeah. My mom would have liked that. I remember when I stood up, so I gave a eulogy at my mom's funeral. My friend that read the 3rd step prayer, she, in the hospital, she read the 3rd step prayer at her funeral. My cousin Caroline read something. I can't remember what Caroline read. She read a prayer, another prayer, like a religious prayer. And then the friend that came over and read, and the one that picked me up the night and all that stuff, she read why can't I think of his name? He wrote the Road Less Traveled. I wrote, you know, what is his name? Robert Frost. She read a Robert Frost poem because my mother loved Robert Frost, and that was the poem that she read. 2 woods diverged in a yellow. Is it two? roads diverge into Yellowwood and I take the one less traveled by and that has made all the difference, or something like that. But that was my mom's favorite poem of his. My favorite poem of his was the one, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening, and I had to memorize that when I was a kid because my mom said you have to know a poem, so that was the poem that I had to memorize. But I gave a eulogy at my mom's funeral, and I remember I stood up there. I was a mess. I literally bawled. I've often said that I want to do like a Peterisms video or read it on here. I want to read my eulogy, and I cannot find it. For the longest time, it was in the suit pocket that I had on, the suit that I wore to the funeral. Because I would find it, and I would be like, okay, I'm not going to take it out because I'll remember that it's in that suit, but it's not in that suit. And I must have at some point taken it out, and it's not in my mom's box, so I don't know where it's at. But the whole thing I typed up the night before the funeral, and it's all about movies that my mom and I watched. It's all told about movies that my mom and I watched. So, anyway, I remember I stood up and I looked out and it was packed, and I started crying, and I said my mother would absolutely love this because she didn't think that anybody cared about her, you know, and to see that she has so many people that love her, it just would have meant so much to her. And I think that's part of it, you know, is that we don't tell people when they're alive, you know, how much they mean to us. We don't call people and say, hey, I've been thinking about you, I haven't talked to you in a couple months, you know. And I think often it's because we don't want to be a burden, or we think that they wouldn't care, or, you know what I mean? And that's just not the case. So, I don't know. I think we should all do a better job at that, you know. I think I should do a better job at that. But going back to what she said, Eureka O'Hara, an hour ago, going back to what she said about fear, I think it's an interesting observation, you know, because I can remember when my grandma died, I asked my mom in high school, I said, how did you feel when my grandma died? I don't even remember how I asked the question, but she said, I felt orphaned. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, you know, my dad died. Well, she and my aunt called their dad Daddy, because he died when they were so young. She'd say, well, when my daddy died when I was, you know, 4, I only had one parent left. She was like, but when my mom died, I realized my own mortality, and I also felt orphaned. And she said, you'll relate to that, Peter, you know, someday when my mom was not a BS artist. Like, you know, like she would talk about her own death, you know. She would say, please don't put me in the ground yet. But yes, I know the day is going to come that I'm not going to be here anymore, you know. But she said, one day you'll understand what I'm saying, you know, when like your dad and I are not here anymore. You know, you feel orphaned. You feel like I have no family. Like I have no, like the people that brought me into this world are no longer here. And she said, it's surreal, you know. And she said, you'll totally understand what I'm saying someday. And she said the other thing is you really, very quickly, you understand your own mortality, that you're next. And she said it makes you look at life in a completely different way. Now, I didn't have to lose both parents for that. I got that with my mother. Like, I really did get it with my mom. Like, you know, that she passed away, and I was like, life is short. I got to make the most of it. I've got to really enjoy my life, you know? So, yeah. It's hard. But I did have a lot of fear for a long time. After I came out of that numbness, I think I had a lot of fear. You know, I had a lot of fear of I'm next. And I had a lot of fear of who do I call, you know? Like, yeah, I can call my dad, but I have a completely different relationship with him. And the things I would have called my mom about, I would never have called my aunt about, you know what I mean? And thank God I have Tanya. And, you know, thank God I have Alex and his family now. But, like, I don't really have anybody that replaces my mom. Not on the level of the conversations that I could have with her. I don't. And so there is a sense of fear there that, like, who do I go to for these things? And I've really had to lean on myself, you know. And what I've had to realize is I am a strong person. I am that person that my mother would want me to be. I can stand on my own 2 feet. I do have confidence today. She made me that way. My dad made me that way. All the people that helped build me up as I was growing up, you know, that really loved me and cared about me, built me into the person that I am today and helped me become that person. And I can stand on my own 2 feet, and I can pass it on to other people and help other people realize too that you can as well be that, you know? We all can. And so I think I'm not as afraid today. I still have fear of death. I still am not ready to die. But I don't have the same fear of death that I used to have, because I just know it's part of what happens in life. But when people tell me that they have no fear of dying whatsoever, I don't understand that, because it is truly the great unknown. I mean, it truly, truly is the great unknown, you know? And I do have fear associated with that. And I'm not ready to go yet, so... Anyway, I didn't know I was going to dedicate the whole vlog to that. Hell, I had no idea what I was going to talk about tonight. I have no idea. So, anyway, I am going to get off here now. I hope you guys are having a fantastic Monday. I hope you guys are having a great start to your week. Unless you have other plans, but just don't. I'm going to stop saying that. I'm just going to say have a wonderful day. Just make the most of your day, you know? And if nobody else has told you this today, I love you guys. And if nobody else told you this today, I love you. Look in the mirror, tell yourself, believe it, pass it on, tell somebody else. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye. Love you.